There comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Na, na, na. Didn't say I could sing. Hi, welcome back to my channel. And this video is going to be the next in the Sodbuster. I really should come up with a snazzy title, but basically the Sodbuster budget series. So today I'm going to tell you the different things that I have done to make income being a stay-at-home mom and homeschooling. Okay, so we're going to do this while I peel a whole bunch of apples. I've got apples that need to be turned into apple butter, and we're just going to kind of go with it. Things that I have done to help our finances during the time. So very first thing is never ever rely on your income. Okay, so don't plan out things with both of your income. And I'm also going to bump my table a lot, so sorry. I realized that when I counted on the things that I was going to make ahead of time, that it would cause more issues than not, because something would come up, or maybe they couldn't afford to pay, or I had to take time off because I had to be with the kids. So that was the very first thing I learned, was not to say, okay, I'm going to make $800 a month this month, so I'll plan on this. And in the very first video I made on these, kind of showing our month to month budget, I did my very first video with that. I talked about how we planned to save ahead, and basically, let me recap that. I'll leave that video link down below for you, and I'll try to make this a playlist. You to remember to do that better. I talked about how we did everything we could to live off as minimal as possible so that we would be ahead a month. So all of August paychecks were put into a bank account, not touched, and then we budgeted September's bills. And living off of August, it would be easy if we did it after tax return time. I think some people have stimulus checks coming. According to my Facebook, a lot of people have stimulus checks, and there's also warnings going on that, hey, you're gonna have to pay back some of this in April. Maybe this, if you can afford to do this. So some people's budgets are a little bit higher, not as intense as ours. Oh, by the way, I also have laundry going. How did we get behind on laundry? So you're gonna hear that in the background. If you can afford to do this, if this isn't gonna bite you really seriously later, by the way, put all of that aside insofar as possible. Live off of that and put all of your money aside, and then next month start putting that money, divide out what you spent, divide it into either monthly or, no, I would do it monthly payback, so that it's all there when it's time to come collect. Just do it. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. But if you're like me and we don't get those checks, I don't think we get those checks. Pretty sure we didn't get those checks. If you're like me in that, then these things that I've done to earn money may help you do that, or maybe it'll help you supplement your income. It could do both, actually. If this is the kind of things that, hey, we made $100 this month or this week, let's pay this bill, and that bill. It might help you. Anyway, all that to say, let's kind of get on to what I've actually done. Okay, lots of chit chat here. Okay, so when I first got married and I didn't have kids, I did a lot of house cleaning. I could do that. I didn't have kids, so I could leave at any time. That's what I went and did. I was especially marketing homeschool moms with many children, because they're the ones that usually need a little bit extra help. And sometimes they couldn't afford to pay me a lot, but I didn't have a lot of time to do anything else, so I looked at it as ministry and as a way to bring in a little extra income. I only had like 1 or 2 moms that really couldn't afford to pay me more than $2.50 an hour. This was back in 2006. So no, yeah, because it was just before the recession, or during the recession, or all that kind of stuff. Anyway, now all the kids come in. It's going to get crazy. Anyway, so things were tight for a lot of people and all that, but I did some house cleaning. I also did that up until moving here from California, and how that worked is I had my little sister come over on Thursdays, and I would buy her a Starbucks coffee, so it would be a $5, or I would buy her some lunch from Jack in the Box. I always hoped that she chose that because she just wanted a chicken sandwich and a Coke, which was less than Starbucks, so that was kind of cool. But whatever she wanted, I would do it. She just knew that's what I could afford to pay her once a week. And those were the people that I really catered to because they paid me well. They wanted to come home on the weekend and have a clean house. They also paid really well. They paid because it was worth it to them. Don't assume this is what you're going to get. I've never seen this amount. They paid me $75 to clean their whole house. I have never seen that amount before. They were the best people to pay. And they lived a very Dave Ramsey type of lifestyle. So it was worth it to them. They had the money, and it was a huge blessing to us during that time because we had rent and we had to pay that. But I still house cleaned up until we moved here because we had rent to pay and I needed extra money. So I catered to them and paid my sister whatever she wanted, and she was able to help. On the weekends, my husband was home, and I would just schedule the clients one a day on the weekends. They were more of, I charged $12.50 an hour, and typically I would get 3 hours, and most of the time they just paid me $40. It was just easier to do that. Right? 12, 36, 37.50. Yeah, they would just give me $40. And that was 3 hours Friday, 3 hours Saturday. A couple of the clients were every other week, so I could, work them into one Friday I had one client that was every other week. Another Friday I had the other client that was every other week, and so they worked out well. And then Saturday is always better for the elderly, and so just schedule them on there. And that's one way that I did it. Again, typically I would be able to charge about $12.50 an hour, and sometimes I would bring my daughter and she would learn how to house clean, and some days I paid my daughter to babysit because she was old enough, or she is old enough, and I pay her the Starbucks coffee to babysit, and then I would take my sister and I taught her how to do it. And actually my sister now has that very generous family, and it's how she's been able to fly out here, so I'm super thankful that she has that job. And then, and she's gotten to go to college with it. Anyway, moving on, this is more about that. So house cleaning, that was a very good one. Again, really able to work. I just would tell my husband, hey, for 3.5 hours each day on the weekend, it is your bonding time with the kids. Didn't always work out well. They're guys. But it was opportunities that were given, and the hope was that it would prove to be fruitful for him. Okay, so the other thing that I did, especially when I first got married, is actually what I'm doing right now. I would make apple butter during the seasons, and I would find seasonal things that I could make and sell to very personal friends. By that, I mean, because of a lot of laws, I needed it to be only friends. I did not go to farmer's market. I did not do this. I did not do that. I kept it to the people I knew that also knew me and knew my cleanliness and knew how my house ran and things like that. And I would sell them quart things of apple butter, peach butter, banana bread, banana muffins, gluten-free things, just randomly throughout the year. And I would typically get about $7 to $10 for a quart. Again, also depends on who you're selling to. The elderly people don't have a lot of as much money. It's also the kind of things that they love, as long as you're not undercutting yourself. So typically it didn't prove to be a fruitful endeavor. It just provided a little extra income, especially during those first few years. So that was another thing that I did. Also, when I first got, when I had younger ones, typically with my two younger ones, I did a lot of babysitting. I had a couple of kids that were not old enough to go to school, and so I took care of them certain days. Sometimes the parent schedule, how their schedule was, it wasn't needed every day, or usually, typically, only half days where I was needed. And that was, I think most of the time, because I were half days, and that was about $100 a week. So about $400 a month. And then I would have a couple of kids randomly that I was only needed every other week because of how I lived on a naval base back in California. The government has a thing where every other week the base had an off day. I'm not sure how to put that very well, but basically every other Friday a lot of the base workers had off. It also meant that the base daycare was closed. So knowing kind of your community is going to be essential, and having that resource helped me. And I do want to point out here that each time I really needed money, like a desperate, hey, I'm not sure how we're going to make this work, I need to find a way, or really struggling, sorry, God has always provided ways. And if you keep your ears open for what is needed, and then you figure out, well, if I have this, I can make this work, that'll be great. For those living out in the country, things like the house cleaning, the babysitting, even to a certain extent the cooking, even though you could like schedule it as a co-op where they meet you when you have to go in to go grocery shopping, something like that would work. They may not work for those of you out in the country. I was in the city, this was easy for me to do. So those were some pretty basic things, and they're also typical. The hardest thing is actually babysitting, and I will say this, because once you're married and once you have your husband's income, people automatically assume they need to give the help to, teenagers and blah, 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 which is so funny because let's give it to the teenagers, but with all those restrictions, so that the teenagers won't do it, so we can never find any help and then complain how the teenagers are never working. That's been my experience in listening to others. Frustrates the heck out of me. Anyway, so it would be hard because I would put out this information, hey, I'm willing to do this, this, and this. I'm willing to house clean. I'm willing to babysit. I'm willing to do whatever it is that you need to do, and no bites. But a teenager that posts something similar would typically get the work she needs. My sister makes a ton of money being a house sitter for people that are on vacation. So she takes care of their pets. I can't be gone from my family at night. That's something that my husband and I aren't willing to do. That's another option if not everybody needs people there to pet sit, but they do need people to check in, water the garden, check on the pets, water, feed the pets. Those are also other ways to bring in income. And I'm sure these are all except for the pet sitting things that I've done, but I did do a pet thing a couple of times. I would go water her plants while I was married. She lived 2 doors down from me. It worked out great. Water her pets, water her plants, check on her cats, feed the cats, try not to kill the cats with my intense hatred towards cats, and I didn't. The cats left me alone. They didn't like me. I didn't like them. It was a mutual happiness agreement. Anyway, so we did that. Did a lot of those. When I got married, I had a sewing business. I did a lot of sewing for a lot, especially homeschool moms. They are looking for modest clothing, and so I did a lot of that. I just didn't find that it was very profitable. By the time you pay for the shipping that kept going up, by the time you paid for, and this was the time when free shipping was going out, by the time you paid for shipping, by the time you paid for the materials and all the hours you would put into sewing a dress or 2 or 3, you maybe made $1 or $2 an hour. Now, if you loved it as much as I did at the beginning, it was fine. It's not like I had to provide for a family. I was just a teen making money, and I enjoyed it. But as a mom trying to, find ways to provide for the family, it just wasn't a profitable thing. But there would be some times when I'm like, well, I have all of this material. I'm not going to be sewing like I did, but I have all this material. I should find a way to use it. And so then I would sew up the material, try to get it out, try to what I call de-stash, and make things. So if you have things that are hobbies, no, you're not going to make a lot of money knitting, crocheting your items and selling them. They're just, it's not a profitable market for all the hours you put in. But if you're sitting at your daughter's ballet studio, why not, create some things during that free time and sell them? It's opportunities, and that's what I do. When I was growing up, I had a woman in my life that said something constantly. She did different things. I love my kids, but they love to come up and hug me, and I'm not prepared for it. She did this thing where she would talk about, well, what do I have in my hand? And she was very big into eBay selling. I'm not good at that. I do not like eBay. I have always seemed to have the most horrible issues with them, horrible experiences with them. But she did really good. And she always used that section in the Bible where God asked Moses, he's like, how am I going to do this? And God tells him, what do you have in your hand? And he had a staff, and God used the staff that Moses held in his hand. And this remarkable mom always used that analogy to, hey, what can I do? This is what I can do. This is how I'm going to provide for my family. And that analogy has always stuck with me. And I have done many things, and that's, someone says don't put all your eggs in one basket. And typically when you're trying to do things, that is the case, especially because this is another thing I've done and another thing that I've learned. When things are discounted at the store, so let's use a Lego set for an example. I found last week a couple of Lego sets that were typically between $15 and $20 marked down for $5 at Walmart. And I picked a couple up because I was like, well, these would be good for Christmas presents. I can afford this. And so I picked them up. But back in the day, I would actually do that, and around Christmas time, and Easter time and summertime, these were, you needed to know your seasons, I would actually put them on the local marketplace and, you know, look up what they're going, okay? So let's say they're going for $20 and I got them for, let's say $9. That would be a typical thing. I'd sell them for $15. It was still cheaper, and Lego sets are expensive. It was still cheaper. Did I buy every single one? No, I was very selective because the idea here was to try and make money. Oh my goodness. I also had to think about how long I was going to have this thing. If I couldn't sell it, I needed to be able to return it, and that usually is a 30 to 60 day notice with your receipt. I think this is a very green onion, or green apple. So you had 30 to 60 days. So I would try to, you know, put those on and sell it if I could. I almost never had to return Lego sets, but I've had to return some things that you just didn't make money for. So when Kmart was here, Kmart would constantly clearance out a lot of things, and some of that was tool sets and car jacks and the battery testers and things like that. I did a lot of those where they would be marked down to $5. You go online and you look up the prices and you're like, wow, this is an actual $45 item, and I made big buck on those. I will tell you that if you don't have a good reputation, people are not going to trust you. Thankfully, growing up in that town, I knew a lot of people knew me. I was accused of stealing these things and selling them for profits. And I had a lot of people that had my back, and they're like, you don't know this lady. She has grown up here. I've watched her from birth. This is not the kind of person she is. And unfortunately, when people don't know you, they're like, oh, they're just pulling the wool over your eyes, because that's, you know, that is a typical thing of society. And it's like, no, this is what I do. I do mark it up. And unfortunately, when you say that, you kind of lose your sales. I'm like, no, I find things that are on sale, and I try to help my family by selling them for a little bit more than what is, than what I got them for, to help my family, but I still also try to sell them for less than what you would pay at the store, so that it can help benefit both of us that are on tight budgets. And so be prepared for those kind of things. So that did come up, and so I would sell a lot of things like that. Also, I did this thing where I would tell my friends and family, hey, and again, this is probably another thing that it works well if you live in the city. We'll try to get to things that you can do now that I'm out in the country, more out in the country. I'm still in the city, I'm not, but I'm further away from a lot of, I'll try to explain it. I'm more out in the country than I'm used to. I'm probably not a complete country girl, countrified. I still have neighbors on either side of me, so, but, where are they going? I can't remember now. Oh. I would tell my friends and family on Facebook, hey, if you guys are getting rid of your stuff, let me know. I would like it. And then what I would do is clean it up and rummage through it. A lot of it did just go to the thrift stores, but a lot of it I was able to kind of create this lot thing for on Facebook, and I would sell them on there. The other thing that you're going to run into is when a lot of people do this, your market goes down. It's the law of supply and demand, okay? So that became a huge thing, and I'm not going to say I was a pioneer behind it, but I was doing a lot of that when Facebook first came out. I was selling a lot. I'd be like, okay, I have a whole lot of size 3T stuff here. Does anybody want it? And then we had these pages as that kind of market grew, and now we've got different types of pages. So those are some things that I did. And again, even if you're out in the country, you can do something like that. Maybe not like, hey, give me all of your stuff, unless you kind of have a way to make that work. but I still think you could make, I still think you could make it work. Have a pickup day, and then when you're in town for groceries or whatnot, say, hey, I come into town on these days, which is actually what my friend would do when she was more out in the country of where we lived. It was like a 20 minute drive into town. She would just schedule, okay, I'm in town on these days at these times. So she did it, and she worked out well. She looked for name brand jeans at the thrift stores and would buy them and then resell them. She would look for certain textbooks. She was better at that than I was, and sell those. So that was another way to make money. Again, I did everything. It wasn't always just one thing. When I started going back to school, I looked at that as a full-time job, or as a part-time job, excuse me. They gave me a stipend to help take care of my family. As a mom, as a woman going back to school, there was a stipend given to us, and we were allotted a certain amount every quarter. And as long as you kept your grades up, you would get that grant, and it was a grant, and it was something else. I don't know if it was a scholarship that I got. So I did that, and I kept my grades up, and I worked hard for that. That was the time when it would not be uncommon for me to be up all night with 4 kids, and because I had a baby that was just born. I also had another business of being a virtual assistant, and that one kind of fell into my lap. Again, that wasn't something I sought out. I was trained, and I still do that to a certain extent. I find cheap Christian books, and I post them online so that people that are trying to find affordable options can do so. So I would do that, and I was paid a certain amount per month on a very big business. And I did that, and I made good money from that. I have not found a job like that again with searching. So a lot of people say do virtual assistant work. I have not been successful in searching that out for myself. I'm also not very good with things like Twitter and Pinterest and work like that. So that's also on me to learn. So that's another thing that I would do with the virtual assistant. I did make good money off of that. I made about $400 a month off of that. That was a really good job. I missed that job. So that was a couple of things I did. Then as we went into the rental home that we were in, I really needed to find work in order to help pay the rent and be able to have groceries. And the job I had there was taking on kids and homeschooling them. So I had my sister, that my mom is a author, and so she's really busy doing that. Golly, authors' lives, they're amazing. I don't know how they do it. I would never want to be an author and meet all those deadlines and write all those books and edit those books and reread them a million times. No, not for me. But she did a lot with that, and so I took on the education of my youngest sister so she could do that. And I was paid for that. But I also took on another boy in our community that the public school system failed him. Everybody will say it, so I'm not just out to get public schools. He just had a really rough life, and rather than being empathetic and trying to figure out how to help this kid, he was just passed from class to class, grade to grade, because he's a very large kid and tall. And, you know, well, we can't have a very tall 6th grader in the 4th grade class kind of mentality, so push him up even though they don't understand. And so I took him on. That kid is amazing. I am just in awe of him every year, of what he has accomplished. I don't think he fully realizes it, which is unfortunate. Anyway, so I took him on, and I charged for that because he would come over, we would get our school done in 3 hours, and I charged for it. And so I would get about $250 for each of those kids every month, which was cheaper than private school in my town. Now I have a modified version of that. I don't charge as much because they're not in my home, and I don't have to provide the one-on-one education or the snacks for these growing kids. So I don't charge as much. I still get about $200. Whoa, that's the wrong one. I still get about $200 a month for the one kid, and I don't charge for my sister anymore. My mom has been amazing to me. Have an apple. And that is simply every weekend, and I'm on the computer all day, so just letting you know. I write out what he is going to do for the next week. I put it all into a document, and I have a checklist. I have him email me pictures of what he has done. I have him write papers. I have him read books. I have him go and make budgets. I have him go and make recipes. I write it all out. And if I'm teaching something, like this year I am teaching Constitution, I have them read a book, and then I go over it in my notes to him, certain things that I want emphasized, certain vocabulary I want him to look up, and literally I'm just writing a curriculum for him every single week, and I charge for that.
Mommy.
So that's another thing I do. If you're homeschooling, that would actually be a very good way to do it, is that virtual. No. So that was another way that I made money. This other way that I made money, again, you're gonna have to be in a town. So I brought housekeeping up here with me. We're in a small town. I'm 2 minutes away from any place, and so I do have a housekeeping job that I do once in a while. I also, back in my hometown, and I have found a similar job here, was to make meals for a couple every day. Back in my hometown, there was elderly. The Meals on Wheels wasn't going to work for them because Meals on Wheels isn't catered so much to your diet. And this lady had a very strict diet. There was no soy, no wheat, no onion, and then it got to the point where she could only do soups. She had such a small throat that that's all she could do. And the problem I was having is, that's great, but the husband needed more substantial food. He was just easygoing. He was like, oh, whatever she wants, I'll do it. And so I made food. He picked it up every day, and I had to buy the groceries for that and make the meal every day for them, and it was a separate meal, and I got paid $500 for that every month. And I had to make enough dinner that it was able to be leftovers the next day. Up here, I have a similar job. I have a couple that, they're not elderly, but they work a lot, and she's very tired, and so they would eat out a ton. And for her, it was, hey, I need a way to save some money. And I'm telling you the backstories because these are your marketing techniques. This is how you market to those people. If you think that your neighborhood has more elderly that need help, this is your catering option. Like the people next door, I could approach them and be like, hey, I see that you eat out every day at McDonald's, and you talk to me how this is not good for you, so what do you think about this? Or this other couple I have, hey, and I did this with her. I did a whole freezer cooking section, showed her how all she would need to do now is just defrost and cook. One thing we learned, that just because of how busy her schedule was, defrosting it early enough was difficult, and so cooking it needed a little bit longer. So I saved her money in that way, but not always. So then she came over one day and she saw me making my $5 meal list and said, hey, what do you think if I gave you a couple extra dollars and you just make the same thing that you're eating for us? And so I was like, actually, that's fine. And here is why. If you're like, but you're only making $2 a meal, let's talk about this for a minute. So again, my goal was to make enough for dinner that night for them and then lunch the next day. That was my goal. Now, when you make double of what you're cooking, it doesn't always double the cost. Not always. Sometimes, but not always. And so let's have a casserole, for instance. I came up with a $5 casserole, but to throw a little bit extra meat and everything in, it actually ended up costing me, instead of $10, only $7. So then I ended up making $5 on that meal. And when you're counting everything you can make, it all adds up. Again, $5 over a certain amount of time gives you extra money. Or extra, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I did that too. Another thing that I did back in my hometown, and it's desperately needed up here, and it was also needed in my hometown, so be sure to check your local area, again, if you can. A lot of this is city type of work, but you can find online stuff, and I'll get to that in just a second, is respite care. Respite care is giving, taking care of special needs, and they have some specific things that you can do. Most of the time you are paid by the government, which means that you can get your full pay. You're not getting paid by people that are trying to penny pinch their money right now. But if that's even if that is not the case, and you are not paid, and they're not paid, you're not being paid by the government, you're going to be paid by the family. Go ahead and find a way to make that work, because that is a desperate need, and it's a really huge way to bless others. So that was another thing that I did. Okay, let's kind of talk about these things that we can do for those of us out, or for those that are out in the country. So I talked about the virtual assistant. A lot of it is, the way I made it work was, hey, you're gonna have to teach me. That's gonna be time on you for me to learn how to do this. And I understand that. So the first week that I'm working for you is free. I just need to be able to learn how to do everything. And as the hiccups come up, we'll address it then. And that always helps. So things like that are good to know. It's really good for your customer to know that it's not going to be a lot of time that that they're going to have to put out for not much return. And then another thing with that is just to make sure that you have a name. So if somebody is that you know can recommend you, that is going to be a key part of this. Until there's more apple here, I just can't figure out how to get it. Okay, so another thing that you can do out in the country that I've done, and I kind of talked about how, you know, selling your stuff online with what you can do. So if you're artsy, figure out a way to do it. I used to make greeting cards and sell them, and it was all supplies that I had. I used to love doing cards. I actually still love doing cards, but I couldn't bring all of my supplies with me, and so I had to sell them and bless others back home, and I really miss doing those. Thankfully, I have a beautiful friend that sends me kits to do every now and then, so that's so much fun when I can get the time to do that. But I would make greeting cards and I would sell them, and a lot of times that would kind of just, you know, help us in a pinch. When we had extra produce from the garden, which is very rare, I would sell extra produce and going to town. I'm in town. I've got some extra homegrown produce. Giving lessons. So on the channel, you have seen me show you how to save a lot of money with budgets and grocery hauls and meal planning. A lot of people, I'm surprised, especially out here, do not know how to do basic cooking, basic budgeting, basic meal planning. If that's something that you can do, you offer a class at a church, a library. Sometimes they have like conference rooms you can use for free. And you just say, hey, for $5, you're gonna get a printable with your grocery list. I'm gonna show you, kind of talk you over how to do it. You can make it an online printable to sell, and you kind of go from there. If you're very good at house cleaning and know some tips and tricks, teach them how to do a fly lady system and sell it that way. That is something that I have seen many people recommend, and I just think it's fantastic, especially if you know how to use your computer well. Another thing that you can do if you're out in the country is, well, like I did with the kids and sending the schoolwork, you can do something like that, but you can also have a Zoom class that you teach once a month, once a week, whatever it is, and you just, hey, this is what we're gonna do, this is how much it's gonna be, and you get the word out. I have a young lady in my life. She is a princess, and she dresses up as a princess, and she reads goodnight books, and she will show up on your birthday party. And we had her for my one daughter, that one actually, we had her come for her 5th, and she was Rapunzel, and so Rapunzel came to the party, and she did Rapunzel games, and she read Rapunzel books, and she had Pascal there, and it is still one of our favorite birthday parties that we did, and she charged about $100 to do that. I think it was a little less than that, but I gave her $100, so I'm confused on how much it actually was. Something like that. People do online painting classes. If you're a very good artist, that is something you can do. If you're like me, that I'm just like, well, yeah, I can do something, that doesn't mean I'm good at it. I get that, which is why I typically default to like the house cleaning and things like that. Totally get it. Just other things that I did was service pickup. I would say, hey, for X amount of money, I will take your shopping list and I will get it all for you. I will get the best deal I can. I will search out coupons. I will do all of that so that you don't have to charge me. Unfortunately, now you've got places like Pickup that have kind of taken that out of our pockets, but that was another thing you could do. I've done where I will go and wash cars, whatever it takes. We need money, fine. I will go out and I will wash cars. So I would let people know, hey, I will come wash your car, vacuum it out while I'm in town, XYZ day. Sure, maybe you get 10, 15, 20 bucks. Okay, well, I got all of these apples peeled, cored, ready to go in the Instant Pot for some more applesauce. I think I have pretty much covered many different things you could do. Hopefully it'll be helpful for you. Christmas is coming. Are you in any way, shape, or form able to provide things that would be good for Christmas? Can you do some canning? Can you make some pies? There's a lot. There is a gal here in town that makes pies that everybody loves to buy, and she charges $12 a pie. I was about ready to pick my jaw up off the ground, and you're like, you get that? You pay that? Obviously she pays that because the people next door bought one and brought it to us, so she's getting that money. She's making peach pie, which, by the way, I can make better, for 12 bucks. It was incredible. My point being, a lot of people out here buy the Debbie Hostess. Your homemade is going to top anything anybody could make any day of the week. And I have a really good recipe. And yeah, I'm not like, oh, that came out wrong. I'm not sure what I'll cut out. Anyway, do something like that, and then just say, hey, for the holidays, I've got this. You can give it as a gift, gift for a teacher. There are so many things, and you can't limit yourself to what you don't think you have time to do. So So I did so many of these, and right now I am homeschooling my kids here. I have 2 kids that I babysit on Mondays and Wednesday mornings for about a little over 3 hours. I'm making food for that family every day. The other ones back in California was Monday through Friday only. This, I'm making it every day. And it works because all I'm doing is making a little extra of us, of my meals. I'm still sending schoolwork once a week, every week. I am still trying to vlog and do this, and sometimes I can earn money from that. It's about $20 a month for Amazon, sharing all my links below, and it's about $100 every 6 months from YouTube for all the videos that I put out. It still adds up, $200 a year to do all this. And what else? What else do? I do those things. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, I do. I have a virtual assistant job. I'm actually in partnership with another lady, and we share those Christian fiction Kindle deals 3 times a week instead of every day. And I'm still able to take care of my family, homeschool, drive myself crazy, read. It just depends on how you're going to schedule your days out. It seems overwhelming, but one of the things that was so game-changing is I have on Facebook and Instagram, I have one of those time apps that lets me know when I've been on there for 30 minutes. So that's 1 hour scrolling through social media, and you just learn to use your time wisely. You'd be surprised at how quickly that goes. The YouTube videos I watch, I'm watching them while I'm cutting up stuff for dinner, while I'm doing stuff. I'm not necessarily sitting down and watching them, which is why I don't always respond. Okay, let's try to wrap that up. We had a phone call interruption. Anyway, all that to say, I want to go back to what my friend had said. And again, that was a game changer for me, and I'm hoping it is for you. She said, "What is in your hand?" And that was from Moses, God talking to him. What is in your hand? What can you do? What do you have? For the longest time, any books that I had finished, even if I picked them up for 50 cents, 25 cents at the thrift store, reselling them in lots could end up making me some money, or even 25, 50 cents, and then selling them for $1 a piece. Still made some money, helped me purchase other ones that I wanted. Things like that. Any unused curriculum, and really think about, okay, is this something I'm going to have to buy again? It's not worth reselling. But if it's something that you're like, I don't think I'm going to use this again, that is worth passing on, making up that shelf room. A lot of times people would, when they're starting like their Dave Ramsey and trying to get to that $1,000 benchmark, they would sell all the extra stuff they have. And a lot of those big pieces are, or a lot of the big money makers are like big pieces of furniture. And when you don't have a lot of that, it's kind of a, what do we have? Because we don't have anything that's worth value. We live off of a thrift store. So things like that just don't really work. So you have to get creative. You have to start thinking. You do a lot of research trying to figure out. There's many videos out there. People have gotten so creative. These are just some of the things that I have done and have tried. Oh, I did forget one. And again, it's for, I think it'll work mainly for city people, but if you schedule things in a certain way, you could do this if you're out in the country and just come into town 1 month. Yard sales. You can make some good, serious money if you're in a prime location for yard sales. And again, taking all that stuff that was donated to me and sifting through it, trying to sell what was worthwhile. Anything that wasn't, that I knew I could still sell. So dish sets that maybe wouldn't sell online but would sell at a yard sale. Mugs, cups, 25, 50 cents. Market cheap. It was all given to you. All those little 25 and 50 cent things are going to make more money for you than a higher price item that isn't selling. So those, oh my goodness, we were at a point where we were doing a yard sale every single month, and we were trying to hop places. And so I would have boxes of stuff that I would have to go to different families, because if you have a yard sale at the same place multiple times a year, people think it's all the same stuff. So we would get so creative at where we could go yard sales, make some good, a couple $100 in a weekend. So I would do a lot of that. And yeah, do yard work. Don't consider any job beneath you. If you need money and you have goals, then you take it and you run with it. Collecting garbage or collecting recyclables. In California, you get money for recycling aluminum cans and bottles. We don't get money up here for that, but I think in Michigan we do. So maybe I should just drive over the border with a whole load of plastic bottles and cans and make some money. But here you don't, but in California you did. So look at where you can make money on recyclables and all those aluminum cans and plastic bottles. People love their plastic bottles up here. Plastic bottles of water. Collect them. Take them in at the parks. Dig them. I would dig through trash. I would bring a whole bunch of hand sanitizer and gloves and wash hands and take showers after all of that. But you could rake in some money, 20, 30 bucks in a month or two or a weekend collecting bottles and cans. And it was that mentality of it needs to be done. I will do it. That gave the best results. So anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Hope it was helpful. We're on to another load of laundry, and I'll see you next time.